Hello! Today we're here to have a little conversation about a concern that seems to hover around every learner. Hover, it's just there, you know it's there, you can feel it's there, it's so annoying, which is, I just cannot see my improvement. Is it even there? Is it even happening? We're going to talk about that today. The first thing I want to ask you is, what are your expectations? What do you expect to achieve and by when? So my expectations are to be fluent and I want to do this by the end of the year, for example. Okay? I think it's very, very important to know exactly what your expectations are and when you are hoping to reach that certain point. The first thing I want to say in terms of when you should expect to reach a specific point in your learning is that fluency is something very individual. So it's very particular to each learner. Fluency may come to you within a year, but it may come to somebody else only within 5 years. It may come to someone who is extremely exposed to the language with a strategy and a purpose within 6 months. To most people it doesn't. It did not, certainly not come to me within 6 months or a year, certainly not. But it is something that I think is interesting for all of us to work towards. I think fluency should be the ultimate goal for all learners. The ultimate goal. So even if it takes you 20 years to reach it, which it shouldn't take you 20 years, but it might if you're not doing it properly, if you're not involved with English as much as you should, if you're learning in the wrong way, so your focus is grammar. Grammar does not bring you fluency. What brings you fluency is a lot of exposure to English. So of course, it all depends. So know exactly what your expectations are. What I notice that tends to be the biggest problem amongst learners when it comes to not noticing their improvement is simply the fact that people expect to learn a word and start using that word straight away. So, okay, now I know the word fathom. I know that it's very similar to understand, to make sense of something. So now that I know this word, I am going to start using it straight away. And then they realize that they are not using it straight away and that they completely forgot the word existed, or they remember the word but they can't remember the meaning, or they feel they cannot find an opportunity to use that word. And then they feel extremely frustrated. Oh my God, I cannot use any of the words I learn. But here is the thing, learning requires time and you going through all of the steps of learning until you are in fact able to use that word naturally. Before you're able to use that word naturally, there are some steps. For example, I told you the word fathom. I told you what it means. I told you how to use the word. And then you start to research about the word fathom. And you start to maybe hear the word sometimes. You're reading something or you're watching something and you recognize the word. That's the first step. The first step is you remembering that you have heard about that word and thus recognizing that word in listening or reading. Done, fine, that's the first step. The second step is then, and this is not set in stone, but it's pretty much how it works for all of us. The second step would then be about you remembering the meaning of the word. So you hear somebody saying, I can't fathom exactly what happened here. And you understand what that sentence is without having to check for the meaning of fathom again. Because until you get to this point of remembering the meaning of the word, really remembering and understanding that sentence, you will probably find that you have to check for the meaning again and again and again. So it might be that you check once and then that's it, you'll remember it forever. Or you catch yourself having to check it all the time and then you ask yourself, what is wrong with me? Why can I not remember the meaning of that word? Nothing is wrong with you. Absolutely nothing is wrong with you. It just so happens that sometimes it takes us longer to really connect with a word and really remember what it is. Not only words, structures, expressions, idioms, everything. All right? And then we've got the third stage of learning, which is, first one, you recognize the word, you heard it, you understand people actually use that thing. Secondly, you remember the meaning. So you hear it and you know exactly what it means. Third stage, and it might take you ages to go from the second stage to the third. It's not something that happens quickly most of the time, but not always, okay? When it comes to language learning, we can't really say this is how it happens for everyone and this is the time frame. It's not realistic, really. But the third one is when you catch yourself trying to use the word. So you remember the word, you remember it exists, you are trying to find an opportunity to use it, and you might even use it in the wrong way, but you found a chance to say it or to write it. You know, it means that you have brought this word to a specific spot in your brain where it is a focal point for you. It's something that you remember. It's something that your brain is focusing on, which is great. After the third stage, there comes the fourth stage, which is you really being able to use that word, and the best stage as well, which is noticing that that word matters. Actually, I think this word really is important. You know, I'm trying to find situations to use the word, and it's so easy for me to find those situations now. It's almost like I can't imagine what my English was like before I knew this word. I don't know about you guys, but I have felt this so many times. A feeling like, oh my goodness, how come I did not know this word before? It's so useful. It's so great, it's so easy to use, and everyone's using it all the time. I had never noticed it, and I had never felt the need for this word, but now I do. So when you go, so I think this is kind of a transition between the fourth and the fifth stage, which is the final stage, which is when you really feel the need to use that word, and then that word becomes your own word. And of course, it might be a word that you don't use a lot. For example, let me think of something. Doorknob, which is what you hold on to when you're opening the door. That is not a word we use all the time, but it might feel to you that it really was a word that was missing in your vocabulary. And acknowledging the words that were missing in your vocabulary is a fantastic awareness stage in your learning. So if you notice this is happening with you, hold on to it. Work on all the other words and expressions and things that you have been trying to learn. But one thing I want to say to you, you're not noticing your improvement because you don't realize that there are all these stages you have to go through before a word becomes your own, and also simply because you are not acknowledging and celebrating each victory in your learning, acknowledging, oh my God, I just used that word. Look at me. Celebrating, I am doing so well. What I'm doing is really working. This is amazing. I used a new word. Do you see what I'm saying? So most of the time people don't do that. They have such high and unrealistic expectations that nothing that is happening within their learning is being acknowledged or celebrated. I think I've given you lots to think about today. I want you to leave me a comment down below to let me know if you have noticed all those stages of learning before and how you're planning on dealing with those stages from now on. Let's talk about that. Thank you for being here today. And come on, acknowledge and celebrate each little step in your learning. They all matter. See you next time.